We're going to be talking about the quadratic formula today. No need to worry about stressing about memorizing it because it is on your formula sheet, but this picture can actually help you guys remember it. Notice the first thing is I see a B here, and this B is saying or thinking things like nothing ever works, the weather's always bad, I hate this. So this B we like to describe as a negative B. Okay, and he's undecided, and that's the reason why we have a plus or minus, right? Because we're not sure plus or minus, okay? And there's this square root. Okay, square root. And in that square root, we have a positive b squared. Notice he's got these squared glasses, okay? And he's carrying with him, or dragging with him, 4 AC batteries. And he's doing this all over 2 apples. That kind of goes into what our quadratic formula is, which is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. Now this part right here, the square root part, the b squared minus 4ac, is also known as the discriminant. Now the discriminant here identifies how many solutions there are going to be. And remember when we talked about solutions, we're talking about x-intercepts. Okay, so you might want to make sure you write that down. Remember, we have other words that mean x-intercepts. For examples, we have zeros, we have roots, okay, solutions, and x-intercepts. All of those mean the same thing. Now, if I'm working this out and I have a square root and I end up with a positive number underneath, that tells me I'm going to have 2 solutions. If I have a square root and there's a negative number inside of it, then that tells me there is no solutions. And the last situation is if I have the square root of 0, then that tells me automatically that I'm going to have only 1 solution. When solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula, be sure to write your equation first in standard form. Standard form of a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, or ax squared plus bx plus c equals y. Number 1. Solve x squared plus 6 equals 5x. First question you ask yourself, is it in standard form? Hopefully you're saying that it is not in standard form. How do I know it's not in standard form? Because I see that the 5x is on the wrong side. So how do I move this positive 5x to the other side where it needs to be? By making it a negative 5x. So we end up with x squared minus 5x plus 6 equals 0. Now this is in standard form. Now I can use the quadratic formula. Now in order to use the quadratic formula, you have to know 3 things. What is my a value, what is my b value, and what is my c value? I know my a value is 1, my b value is negative 5, and my c value is 6. Now, before I just plug this into the formula, I like to rewrite it in parentheses. So negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2 times a. It just makes it easier when I do this to plug in my numbers. I know in the first parentheses goes the letter b, which in this case is a negative 5. I know in the second parentheses goes again the letter b, which is negative 5. In my third parentheses, it's the letter a, which is the number 1. In the fourth parentheses, it's the letter c, which is the number 6. And down at the bottom, my last parentheses is again the letter a, which is the number 1. Now this is where I do basic math. If you have a calculator, this is really super easy. Negative and a negative turns it into a positive 5. Plus or minus the square root of, now in my calculator I'm going to go ahead and type in just how I wrote it here, okay? So with the parentheses and everything, I'm going to type in parentheses negative 5, close parentheses, squared, minus 4, open parentheses, 1, close parentheses, open parentheses, 6, close parentheses, and see what I get. And my answer here is going to be 1. And that's all being divided by 2 times 1, which is 2. Okay, well, what is the square root of 1? I keep the 5, the plus or minus. The square root of 1 is 1, all divided by 2. Now remember, because you have the plus or minus sign, it turns it into two problems. So I have 5 plus 1 divided by 2, and I also have 5 minus 1 divided by 2. 5 plus 1 is 6 divided by 2 equals 3. There's my first solution. Now my second solution, 5 minus 1 is 4 divided by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. There are my two solutions. So the answers are 3 and 2. Those are my solutions, or my x-intercepts. Is it in standard form? ax squared plus bx plus c. Yes, this one is in standard form, so we're good to go. Now identify my a, my b, and my c. Now all I have to do is plug it in. So in the first parentheses is letter b, which is 4. Second parentheses is b, is 4. Third parentheses it's a, which is 2. Fourth parentheses it's c, which is -7. And the last parentheses is a again, which is 2. Now I simplify. -4 plus or minus the square root of, let's see what we get when we work that out. The answer is 72, all divided by 2 times 2, which is 4. Alright, well, I keep the -4 plus or minus. The square root of 72 is not a perfect number, so we're going to round to the nearest hundredth place, which gives us 8.49. I'm going to divide that by 4. Remember here, your problem turns into two problems. I have -4 plus the 8.49 divided by 4, and I have the -4 minus the 8.49 divided by 4. Okay, this is all the work now. You can just pretty much type into your calculator and get your answer. When I do -4 plus 8.49 and divide it by 4, my answer is 1.12. It's my first solution. And then on the second problem, when I do -4 minus 8.49 divide by 4, I get -3.12. So therefore my two solutions are 1.12 and -3.12. Alright, so we're going to once again use the quadratic formula. So let's check to make sure that it's in standard form. I have x squared minus 2x minus 8 equals 0, and yes, I agree that it is in standard form. Can you use the square root method? No. Why not? Because it has the bx involved. Sorry, I have the hiccups. So let's go ahead and plug in what our a value is, our b value, and our c value into our formula. I have negative b, which is -2, plus or minus b, -2, squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is -8, all divided by 2 times a, which is 1. So let's simplify this. Negative and a negative gives me a +2, plus or minus the square root of, we would end up with 36 when I do that, all divided by 2 times 1, which is 2. Well, 2 plus or minus the square root of 36 is 6 divided by 2. Remember, that turns it into two problems. 2 plus 6 divided by 2, and 2 minus 6 divided by 2. 2 plus 6 is 8 divided by 2 equals 4. This is my first solution, or x-intercept. 2 minus 6 is -4 divided by 2 equals -2 as my second y-intercept. So my two solutions are 4 and -2. Solve each equation. Once again, we're doing more of the exact same thing. So notice I went ahead and wrote down my basic formula with my parentheses because it makes it easier for me. Remember, always ask yourself two questions. 1, is it in standard form? And 2, can I use the square root method? Notice for A, it is in standard form, and I cannot use the square root method because there's a bx. So let's go ahead and plug in the numbers here. -3 is my A, 5 is my B, C is -2. So 5 goes in the first two parentheses. -3 goes in the third one, -2, and the last parentheses is again -3. So I get -5 plus or minus the square root of, when I work that out all in my calculator, it is equivalent to 1. And then I get -6. Well, the square root of 1 is 1 divided by -6. Now I get to split this into two problems. I get -5 plus 1 divided by -6, and I have -5 minus 1 divided by -6. -5 plus 1 is -4 divided by -6, gives me a fraction of 2/3 as one of my solutions. And the second one, -5 minus 1 is -6. Divided by -6 is equivalent to +1. So my two solutions, or my two x-intercepts, or my two roots, or my two zeros, are 2/3 and 1. Alright, second problem. Hopefully you guys noticed that the first thing I have to do is get rid of that 2x, which is on the wrong side, because this is not in standard form. So if I move that positive 2x to the other side, it becomes -2x. Okay, so I get 7x squared minus 2x minus 8 equals 0. Now I can label my A, B, and C. A, there's my B, there's my C. I cannot use the square root method because I have a bx. So I know the -2 goes in the front, -2 goes in the second parenthesis, 7 goes in the third, -8 goes in the fourth one. Notice you're looking at this formula right here is where I'm getting my values from. Finally, the last one is A, which is 7. Now let's break this down. Negative and a negative makes it a +2, plus or minus the square root of, when I take -2 squared minus 4 times 7 times -8, I get a total of 228. And that's all being divided by 2 times 7, which is 14. Now, the square root of 228 leaves me with +15.1, all divided by 14. Remember, splits into two problems. My first problem is going to be 2 plus 15.1 divided by 14. And my second problem is going to be 2 minus 15.1 divided by 14. If you have a calculator, this is super easy to do. You just plug it in your calculator, right? 2 plus 15.1 divided by 14 gives me a total of 1.22 as my first solution. And my second solution is going to be 2 minus 15.1 divided by 14 is equivalent to -0.94. So those are my two solutions for that quadratic. Same thing. First problem here, C. Question is it in standard form? Yes, it is. There's my A, there's my B, there is my, not X, there's my C. Can I use the square root method? No, you can't. Why? Because you have a bx. So let's plug in what we should know. B goes in the first two parentheses, A goes in the third, C goes in the fourth, and then finally at the bottom is A again. Now let's break it down. I get -3 plus or minus the square root of, and when I work that all out in my calculator, 3 squared minus 4 times 2 times 4, I actually end up with -23, all divided by 2 times 2, which is 4. Excuse me. Sorry, you notice I can actually stop right here. Why? Because I have a negative under my square root. And if you remember correctly, when you take the square root of a negative, the answer is non-real. real. So our answer here is simply just no solutions. Next one, same concept. Is it in standard form? Yes. I have my A, my B, and my C. Okay, I can't use the square root method because there's bx involved. So let's just plug in our values. B, so that's 39, goes in the first two parentheses. 3 goes in the third, and 108 goes in the fourth one, and in the last parentheses goes in number 3 again. I get negative 39 plus or minus the square root of. So when I do that all in my calculator, I end up with 225. All divided by 2 times 3, which is 6. Alright, well, let's see. What is the square root of 225? The answer is 15, all divided by 6. Remember here, your answer splits into two problems. Negative 39 plus 15 divided by 6, and I get negative 39 minus 15, all divided by 6. Work this out in your calculator. Okay, so negative 39 plus 15 divided by 6 is a total of negative 4. So there's my first solution. And my second solution is going to be negative 39 minus 15 divided by 6 is negative 9. There are my two solutions, my two x-intercepts, my two zeros, my two roots. Remember, all those words mean the same thing. Suppose the football player kicks a ball and gives it an initial upward velocity of 47 feet per second. The starting height of the football is 3 feet. If no one catches the football, how long will it be in the air? Use the vertical motion formula, which is 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 47t plus 3. So notice you can always think about the t's as x values. Is it in standard form? Yes. Can you use the square root method? No, because you have a bx. So notice we're going to go ahead and plug this in. My a value, b value, and my c value. My b value is 47, so that goes in the first two parentheses. A value is negative 16. C value is 3. A value goes down at the bottom in the last parenthesis. Now let's break that down. We get negative 47 plus or minus the square root of 2,401. All divided by 2 times negative 16 is negative 32. Now, let's see if we can take the square root of 2,401. So you get negative 47 plus or minus 49 is the square root of 2,401. All divided by negative 32. Remember, you get two problems. First problem, negative 47 plus 49 divided by negative 32. And the second problem, negative 47 minus 49, all divided by negative 32. So the first one, when I break that down, we get negative 0.06. And the second one, when I break that down, we get 3. Now, obviously, these are in reference to seconds, okay? And if we just think a little bit, can we have a negative amount of time? No. So therefore, the only true answer to this question is, okay, how long will the ball in the air? 3 seconds. Okay, because we're not going to use a negative answer for our time. A rectangle with one side length x and the other side length x plus 1. So notice it tells me two different sides there. So hold on, let me write that down. Has an area of 60 feet squared. Now, the area of a rectangle is represented by the equation x squared plus x equals 60. Find the dimensions of the rectangle rounded to the nearest hundredth. Notice I have the problem written. First thing I ask myself is it in standard form? And the answer to that is no. 60 is not in the right spot, so I know I need to move it by subtracting 60. So I end up with x squared plus 1x minus 60 equals 0. Now it is in standard form. I cannot use the square root method because I have a bx. So I go straight to using my quadratic formula. Notice there's my a value, my b value, and my c value. So let me plug those in. So 1, 1, a is 1, c is negative 60, and a is 1. So when I work this out, we get negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 241 all divided by 2. Well, what does that give us? Negative 1 plus or minus, well, the square root of 241 is approximately 15.52, all divided by 2. Remember, this splits into two problems. Negative 1 plus 15.52 divided by 2, and I also get negative 1 minus 15.52 divided by 2. When I work those out, we get, for the first one, you get 7.26, and the second one results in negative 8.26. Now remember, we talked about this, right? The length cannot ever be negative, so we're going to resort to 7.26 being our actual proper solution. So what are the sides of the rectangle? Because that's what the true question is. Now remember, one side is just x, which means it's just 7.26. So there's one answer, okay? Now the second answer is x plus 1, because that's the second side, right? The other side is x plus 1. So basically it means that I take the 7.26 and add 1 to it, and that's positive 8.26. So those are my solutions of the dimensions of the rectangle. Last part, finding the discriminant. Now remember, discriminant is the b squared minus 4ac. Now when I do this, if the number is positive, it means I have two solutions. If the number is negative, that means I have no solutions. And if I get 0, then the answer is one solution. So how many solutions would there be by just looking at the discriminant? So I'm not asking you to actually work it out, just how many are there going to be. Number 7. First identify A, B, and C. Notice this is in standard form, that's why I can jump to that. A is 2, B is 6, C is negative 8, so let's plug this in. B squared minus 4 times A times C. 6, 2, negative 8. When I take the square root of that, I get 100. Well, if the number is positive, then that tells me that there are two solutions. Alright, next one, same concept. A and C. Notice we could actually work this problem out by using the square root method because there's no bx. Okay, so I automatically know that b is 0. A is 1, C is 49. Alright, let's see what we get when we take the square root or do our discriminant. B squared minus 4 times A times C. That is 0 squared minus 4 times 1 times 49. When I work that out, we end up with negative 196. Hold up. If we get a negative under the square root, we know that the answer is no solution. And let's see the last one. Is it in standard form? Yes, it is. So I have A, which is 1, B is 6, and C is 9. Let's check out the discriminant and see what we come up with. B squared minus 4 times A times C. Well, I have 6, 1, and 9. And when I take the square root of all that, or when I just work that part out, we get, what do you know, 0. And if I end up with 0, that tells us that we have only one solution. Hopefully this stuff was not too bad. The formula is usually pretty simple and straightforward.